The Leo King will be live shortly. Please hold on while the collective consciousness loads, and thank you for being a part of the Leo Kingdom.
What is going on, everybody? It is David Palmer, the Leo King, and guess who I got in the Leo King studios today, everybody? I got the one, the only, Rick Levine. How you doing today, Rick?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. It's pretty cool being here in the midst of the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Leo is? The center of our corner of the universe?
That's what I like to think so. And you know, it was interesting yesterday, you and I...
as long as I'm your guest, that's what I will think so, too.
Perfect. You know what? Then you get along with me great here. Yesterday, you and I were sitting in the center of the universe. We were sitting behind some old pictures of... it wasn't even the zodiac wheel, but it was old depictions of alchemy and the Hermetic science, basically back in the earlier centuries, 14th, 15th century. And we were sitting in a picture with that.
We were, and that was pretty amazing at the Getty Museum. Anybody who's in the Los Angeles area, it's a pretty stunning exhibit of alchemy and astrology and the art of alchemy and how they did their magic of getting the colors. The exhibit on the alchemy of colors is pretty powerful. It was very fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you know, Rick, why don't you tell everybody, for my audience, if they don't know who you are as an astrologer, what it is you do with astrology and where you practice all your astrology?
Well, I practice my astrology pretty much in the same solar system that you do.
Great.
I live up in Seattle, and a number of years ago, my now deceased partner, Jeff Jower, astrology partner, Jeff Jower, and I started Star IQ and stariq.com. I look at it as kind of, it's Jupiter. It's a huge star, but it never quite reached star mass, so it settled back and became Jupiter. My daily astrology column is there, along with some links for some of my other stuff. It's basically my site. However, I also write for tarot.com, and tarot.com is a large site, tarot and numerology and I Ching and astrology. And I write their daily horoscope column and have been doing this now for about 15 and a half years. And so, like you, I think we're rare breeds in as much as we both do shit every damn day. Every day.
And
7 days, no vacations, every day.
There really is no vacation. And it was interesting because for years I used to watch you and Jeff, and then I was putting my videos up, and we were like the only green screen astrologers too. I always noticed that. And it was about really good presentation, and you and Jeff had such a great banter back and forth and such different views as well of astrology.
I still banter with him. He's just inside my head.
Oh, I'm sure he is. And for people who don't know, what sign are you?
I am, Jeff always would say that I have over the legal limit of planets in Aries. I have Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the North Node all in Aries, all in the 11th house. And I have Gemini rising, which I like to say makes me sound smarter than I really am. And I have a moon in Cancer, which makes me tolerable.
That actually can make the Aries tolerable, but you have a lot of fire. And I think you put that into your astrology because the way that I watch you, you're very passionate, you're very into the astrology, and you've created a great persona with it. You know, you've made astrology your own way. And I think that's so important with astrology today and the way that astrology should be done. And I followed you for years and years, and I've been watching you, and I always watch any report that you do because you've worn costumes on Halloween. You really get into it.
Anything for a little attention. Did I just say that to a Leo?
You just said that to a Leo. I know, a guy who calls himself the Leo King, right? I mean, geez.
Well, for those of your listeners or our watchers that are astrology smart, I have 2 planets in Leo, but they're the heavyweights. They're Pluto and Saturn. And my Saturn is at the very end of Leo, which means that it is lined up with one of the 4 king stars, Regulus, which was one of the Babylonian watchers that kind of made sure that the things on Earth were going okay. Well, so I have a little bit of that Leo in me.
You have that.
And I have the sun in my chart. That makes everyone a little bit of a Leo.
Everybody should be a Leo if they got a little bit of sun in there. But you know what's interesting, Rick, is I believe you have a Gemini rising, isn't that right?
Yes.
And you have a very mercurial aspect to you. Sure, you're a lot of fire. Sure, you've got a lot of that oomph. But you're very fast. You're very fast when you do your astrology. Whenever you do it, you have a way of going about it so quick. You come up with the transits, because I watch your monthly report. Why don't you tell people about your monthly report? Because your monthly report, to me, is one of your coolest aspects.
Well, the monthly report is done in front of a live audience. Jeff and I started this 8 years ago. It's the last Wednesday of every month, and we do it in front of a live audience at a coffee house, Soul Food Coffee House in Redmond, Washington. It's a fun night if you live in Seattle or in the area. We've had people come from as far away as Iceland and England just to come. I mean, vacation to Seattle, and then they were there. But it's on YouTube, and the links are always on my Facebook page. I'm Rick Levine, Astrologer, facebook.com/Rick Levine Astrologer. The link is always there, and it's always on my Star IQ page, which is stariq.com. And I talk about we like to call it the cosmic weather. It's not by sign. It's not about any one individual. It's about what's going on up there. You do a lot of that in your, live broadcasts. And I like to think of live astrology like that, where we're talking about the weather. It works like this. Okay, it's a beautiful day, and it's a day to go to the beach because the sun's out. So the weather forecaster or the astrologer knows or is pretty sure that it's going to be a sunny day. Now, that's great for people who want to go get suntans. Mm-hmm. But if you're a duck, the rainy days that are overcast are the most amazing days because those goddamn humans aren't overrunning your territory. And so those are the days for you.
Yeah.
So what happens is that we have certain weather. When we write dailies or when we do videos on dailies for individual signs, what we're really looking at is the weather. So we just had this Mercury opposite Uranus, which is craziness. And a Taurus might not do as well with that craziness as a Gemini who might go, cool dude,
Right.
So that's and so this monthly thing is basically a look at the month ahead. It's about an hour long. It sits up there all month for anyone who wants to watch it, and it's free.
Well, I've always loved it because you do a really good thing with solar fire, which I like solar fire because it really can show you the planets moving, and you do a really good job of showing us the whole entire month, showing us how to go through things. We're actually going to show everybody one of the charts that you have created yourself with solar fire, actually. This is it right here, right?
Yeah, I have, and here you can just see how we can animate it. So as you look at this, let's go back to today, which is the 20th, and you can see today that the sun, that Mercury is pretty close to opposite Uranus. Mercury is pretty close to opposite Uranus. And as we move it a day at a time, you can see that Uranus, a slow-moving planet down in the lower left of the screen, which is at 22 degrees of Aries, is barely moving, but now the sun has moved into Scorpio and Mercury has moved ahead of the sun, and so you can actually see this animation moment by moment, and it's really a nice way to get people to see that we look at charts for you, your chart, or my chart, or Joe's chart, or Mary's chart, or a chart for the election. These are static moments of time.
They are.
But that ain't the way the planets work. There's no such thing as a still moment up there. Everything is movement. I like to think of it as astrology's answer to what the physicists call the particle wave duality. We look at charts as particles. They're stopped moments of big particles, rocks in space. But it really always moves, and that's the magic of astrology, and that's what keeps us in business.
I was telling you right before we did this interview, is part of the reason why I like to do astrology is this whole technology thing. I love doing the videos about it. I love setting up the technology. I love being able to show the chart. And there's something about astrology that connects you with so much more than just looking at planets. it's a connection to all things and how all things connect, and that there's movement in everything, and that everything changes. I love your goose analogy with the weather, because you know what? There's times in life where I think we're put with this projection of the world that I don't know if it's some higher control source or something, that life has to be this one way only, and it should be this only one way. When we were talking about charts earlier and the uniqueness that everybody's special, and that everybody has their own thing, and everybody has their own unique time, and everything is changing and evolving, and I think it's important to never get stuck on one energy only, because I think what I've learned through astrology is, holy shit, it changes way too much.
Well, and it changes always, but not only that, is that any one thing has multiple ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
The rainy day is great for a lot of things. You know, without rainy days, especially here in Southern California, without rainy days, we don't get green that grows.
Right.
You know, and so we look at things and we make judgments based upon an immediate set of needs that change.
Yeah. And speaking of change, it's been quite a year, 2016.
Holy shit, it has.
2015, 2014, 2013, 2012, I mean, it's been pretty wild. Just
I think back to 2010 when Uranus moved into Aries.
Yes.
That's when the switch went on the day of the Fukushima
Yeah.
earthquake, tsunami, meltdown. That was the day Uranus tipped into Aries to stay.
So why don't we actually pull up your chart that you had here as we're talking today? It's October the 20th today, right?
Let me back that up.
And what's interesting is we've been talking about this Mars-Pluto conjunction happening in Capricorn, and it's happening what did you call it? You're calling it the revival of the last 3 years, or the rewind?
Well, I think there's a bit of an, I called it an instant replay. You know, time is linear only in our imagination. In the universe, everything that's ever happened and everything that ever will happen is happening right now.
Right.
And so we get this kind of linearity of time, and so we look at what happened back in the 60s when Uranus and Pluto were exactly aligned. And then we look at over the last several years when Uranus and Pluto were square, and the same issues in the late 60s, you know, the sexual freedom, the feminism, now gender equality, civil rights, now civil rights, use of drugs, now medical. Your state, my state, marijuana is already legal, and in California it most likely will be in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So these are 60s issues. Ecology, you know, then it was Save the Earth, and now it's, you know, get Monsanto or whatever.
Right.
But all these issues and there are many more that were
and
big.
social issues. They would
unrest.
say, yeah, especially
People
with
in the
police
street.
and race, and
You know,
it's all kind of coming back a
the
little
height
bit.
of the Democratic, you know, convention in 1968, compared to, you know, Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy everything. There's that sense that we're back there, although it's different now because it's no longer a game. Not that it was a game then, but it's way more intense now. So here's the thing. In the 60s, the Uranus-Pluto conjunction occurred over the summers of 1965 and 66.
Right.
But unlike an individual chart where we react quickly, it's like the lag of seasons. The hottest day of summer isn't the day of the longest light. It takes a while for it to catch up. So in the 60s, we had the alignment of Uranus-Pluto 65, 66, but the real shit went down in 67, 68, 69, 70, and then by 71, 72, it began to taper. Fast forward to here, we have the Uranus-Pluto square that kind of was ticked off when Uranus moved into Aries in 2010, but
and
the
Pluto in 2008.
and
It was kind of an in between little thing there, 2008 to 2010.
Absolutely, totally agreed. But then it was exact. The square was exact.
2012.
7 times between 2012 and 2015. And there are a lot of astrologers who are running around saying, well, that's over. And I go, that's bullshit. because the energy is going to build yet for the next year or 2 or 3. And it'll build in particular when the faster moving planets make contact with the planets that were making the action then. And now we go back to your Mars, the Mars conjunct Pluto over the last couple of days, and Mars squares Uranus over the next, I think it's 8 days, I think it's next Friday. And so with this Mars conjuncting Pluto and then squaring Uranus with other planets in Libra coming into the mix, we're getting like this instant replay of the last 4 or 5 years, tying back to what was what the seed of the mid-late 60s was.
And what's interesting is how you bring up this kind of like this aftermath of the transit. It's also dealing with two outer planets, and those guys take a long time to move. They're past the Saturn line, right? Saturn is the last planet you could see with your eye, and then we were looking at all these old pictures yesterday in books on how past the Saturn line they didn't know what was out there. They knew though it was something transcendental, is kind of a term I guess you could call it, right? This kind of very subconscious, invisible world that's, especially if you just look at the planet Uranus ruled by the heavens, or if you look at Neptune, you call it the expansion of Jupiter, right?
Well, I think Neptune is Jupiter that's escaped. It's like no more Dad's not home. I don't have to do his shit anymore. I can go forever.
Right.
I can whatever the indulgence is, whatever the thought is. No stop.
Right. And then Pluto, which is the other half of Mars, allowed to truly drill as far deep as it wants to go. So it's interesting with these outer planets that are making this aftermath, that they really do take a while, because there's a mystical aspect to these planets. The more simpler planets like Saturn all the way to the sun, let's say, and even though the sun's not a planet, those kind of wear off quick. They kind of happen and then, even the Saturn-Neptune square, even though it happened this year, even though it's already 3-4 degrees off, you can feel it's not as confusing as it kind of was.
It drops off pretty quickly.
Right. But I think you have hit something so good, and I'm about to put something up here. What is this book that you're talking about here? Because that's what is going on.
All right. So one of our contemporaries, associates, a very, very bright man named Richard Tarnas, who is right now at the tail ends of producing a full-length movie that's being narrated by John Cleese.
Wow.
Called The Changing of the Gods.
Oh, I think actually I saw the preview for this like 7 months ago or something.
So that's about right. So Rick Tarnas, many years ago, wrote a book called something of the Western Mind. My brain just lost it for a second. I'll think of it.
He wrote a planet about the outer planets.
Well,
right?
This book, Cosmos and Psyche, is basically a history of the West, looking at the outer planet cycles and correlating. It's not an astrology book. It's a philosophy, history, psychology book. The subtitle is Intimations of a New World View. And he takes the Jungian concept of cosmos out there, psyche in here, and what's the connection? Well, they're the same, as above, so below. Right. And so he looks at it from an academic, historical point of view, not only what happened in the 60s at the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, and what's happening now, but going back over the past 2,000 years and seeing these repetitive cycles. I mean, here's just one crazy story. In 1455, there was a conjunction of Uranus-Pluto like there was in 1965. In 1965, we had the invention of the digital printing press. The IBM came out with its first business computer. In 1455, the year of the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, that was when Gutenberg printed the Bible.
Right.
And so you look at these historical repetitive cycles of social change, revolution, new ideas, invention, technology, and we're right in the midst of this incredible, crazy period that began in the 60s with the Uranus-Pluto conjunction, and Uranus-Pluto squared after the 1455
we
one
talked about this
was the
yesterday,
age
yeah.
of discovery.
Yeah.
In
Columbus.
1492, Columbus, who's not this nice guy that we thought
Yeah.
he was when we were kids, but he sailed the ocean blue. And it wasn't just Columbus. It was England, and it was the Dutch, and it was the Spanish and the Portuguese. And it was because the things that were in the printing press were now out there, and it couldn't be contained. Gutenberg thought there was only one thing that would ever be worthy of printing, and that was the book of the church.
Mm-hmm.
IBM thought there was only one thing would ever be worth printing, and that was the book of government and big business.
Right.
But then in 1492, all of a sudden the printing press began printing Plato and the Corpus Hermetica and all of this non-church shit, and the church lost control. That was the beginning of the seeds of the Protestant Reformation. Now we come back to our period of time. In 1965, we had the
computer.
the computer thing, but at the Uranus-Neptune conjunction in the late 80s, early 90s, there was the World Wide Web,
Yeah.
and it proliferated. And now at the square, even the political parties in our country can't hold on to their shit.
No.
I mean, regardless, I don't care where you are I do care where you are in the political spectrum, but we're not going there. But wherever you are, the fact of the matter is that the two main parties lost control.
They did.
They totally lost control. The Democratic Party had enough infrastructure that they pulled it back in, but they don't have the candidate
Right.
that the people wanted. And the Republican Party, well, I don't even need to say anything about that. But the point is like the 1490s, where the whole idea of the church losing control, nationalism is history. Oh, granted, we still live in the United States. We still have states' rights in countries that are different. But this whole immigration issue, I mean, you know what it is? That was a function of the Saturn-Neptune square. Saturn is walls. Saturn is structure.
It is.
Neptune is no structure.
Gone.
Leaky. It's leaky borders. And so you can respond to a Saturn-Neptune square when you have two planets square. Typically, you favor one or the other to deal with it. And so you can either go to Saturn and go, no one's getting in, no one's getting out, build a wall. The problem is that if you build a wall in a cell, the cell dies because it needs to get food and water
Right.
in and out. So the same token is you can go to the other side and go, anyone should come in and anyone should be able to go out. You go to a cell, it loses its structure. It can't hold its shit.
Right.
It dies. So this is how the planets reflect these national events on a more global perception.
And in the middle of this last 3 years, Jupiter and Saturn also squared on top of it all. So it's been a roller coaster, a bang, 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 bang.
And it ain't over.
It ain't over. And I think it's been a very crazy time. And a lot of people have looked to astrology over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years more than ever.
Astrology can't fix anything, but it can help one understand it from a larger cosmic point of view.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And I want to get your fix on, because the last time Pluto-Uranus squared was in the late 1920s and early 30s.
Yeah.
And I always look at that as the Industrial Revolution, even though it was a weird time because
Yeah.
people got poor, I guess you could say, and the economy crashed. But it was interesting that it really was a revolution in itself. People started having, it was normal to have a car and live in a house now and have electricity
In
and
the
be
Uni-
able to
in the United
in the United
States, in
States.
the
That was
West.
also Pluto and
In the
Cancer,
West.
by the way,
Yeah.
which I think is interesting. And nobody wants to talk about this with me, so I'm glad I got you here because
I don't want to either.
I think you were going to want to.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah, he's right here.
So-
he wants to talk to you about this.
But this is what I want to talk about, and this is what I want to get your answer about, is Pluto, in less than 100 years, has gone over half the zodiac because it's got a weird orbit, right? So it was in Cancer in the 20s and 30s. Here it is in Capricorn now.
Yeah.
We have gone through
Yeah.
the fastest transit of Pluto ever.
I mean, well, it
not
happens
ever, but
every
you know what I
once
mean.
every
Yeah.
250
Right.
years. Yeah, because Pluto is such an elliptical orbit, and Johannes Kepler, our boy, the astrologer, Johannes Kepler, who's considered to be the father of modern astronomy, he figured out that the closer to the sun that a planet goes, the planet is, because planets are elliptical, as planets get close to the sun, they cover more territory. As they go farther away from the sun, they cover less territory. And so, yes, we've had the Pluto, time speeds up when Pluto is close to the sun and moves fast. And it's been a bit crazy. It's been definitely a bit crazy. And yeah, we have people who are alive who are experiencing Pluto oppositions, which shouldn't happen until about 130.
And that's what's incredibly crazy to me.
People, it used to be that you wouldn't get a Pluto square your natal Pluto until your 70s. And now people are getting them in their 30s, 40s.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this time, since that Pluto-Uranus square of the 20s to this Pluto-Uranus square,
there's something
about just that time period, which if you notice in our human psyche, we don't know we do know shit about the past, but us as humans, we don't even connect there. We feel a huge disconnect. Does that make sense?
We're very disconnected. But there's something else that no astrologer is... I talk about it some, but I don't hear other astrologers talking about it. And I know you'll appreciate this because of what you do, not just in astrology, but in your life in general. And that is Marshall McLuhan, a media guru of the 60s and 70s, who coined the word flipped out, for example. And he used it to describe electronic technology that has gone outward with radio and television and computers. Our nervous system is now outside. We've, as a species, flipped out. The thing is that with computers, the World Wide Web, with our nervous system out there, with the media, social media, astrology is a different thing than it once was. And I don't mean just from the ability of you and I being able to talk to tens of thousands of people, which is a miracle in itself.
It
to
is.
be able to see clients. I don't see clients in my house, in my apartment, my office anymore.
You're on Skype now.
I see clients all over the world.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing that is really different is something that I call the cosmic feedback loop. And it's this. You know how when you're doing your music, and I know you do awesome music, when you do your music, there's a certain place where you can get to where you can make the amplitude great enough that the system begins to come back onto itself and create different beats, frequencies, harmonies or disharmonies that were not in the original music, but intensify it because of its amplification.
Right.
Now, I want you to imagine that you were living at the French Revolution, another Uranus-Pluto.
Right, exactly.
If you were living at the French Revolution and you had this incredibly crazy shit going on in your life and you were seeing what the government was doing and you were talking to the people on your streets and you were creating armies, you'd have no idea that people were doing that in Berlin also.
Right.
And that people were doing that anywhere else in the world. And on top of that, when that aspect was exact, you might think that you were all alone in the universe trying to take down the King of France.
Right.
But because now everyone has a video camera and we get these nodal points, we're going to talk about nodes in a bit. A node is just a standing point.
It is.
And so you get these blips of people on the street. You know, we have like someone in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square or people in the square in Egypt or whatever.
Right.
These images become images. So every time the planets come around and re-stimulate these same points, all these things go back on media and our energy becomes like a cosmic feedback loop, which is why the conjunction of Uranus and Pluto in the 60s was different than any other Uranus-Pluto conjunction before. It was because of the tribal drums, the music. The media missed the fact. The people in control thought, oh, it's young youth music.
Right,
How cool.
right.
They missed the fact that that wasn't music to us. Who I lived through that. I was a teenager. That wasn't music. That was the fucking news. It was like we listened to Bob Dylan. Congratulations, dude, for getting the Nobel Prize. We listened to the latest Beatles album or Dylan album or
Zeppelin,
Grateful Dead.
yeah.
What basically. It didn't matter whether you were living in Fargo, North Dakota, or in New York City, or someplace in Libya. You got the music and you got the vibe of that Uranus-Pluto conjunction.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so different now with social media.
It was the peak of radio too, right? I mean, radio had finally reached peak. Television
but
had
the
started
radio
to reach.
had reached peak. Was playing shit that the people who were playing it didn't know what they were playing. They didn't know that Go Ask Alice was about LSD.
Right.
They had no idea.
They had no idea.
They had no idea. And by the same token, what we're seeing now globally is the fact that we can link up all over the world instantaneously. And we got some serious shit to deal with, and neither Hillary nor Donald is going to fix the shit that we got to deal with, because in their own are bad ways, each of them in their own. I mean, Hillary, I don't want to get into this.
Yeah,
I don't want to get into this.
Trust me, it causes a lot of controversy,
No,
especially when we have 400 people in here right now.
on my YouTube 2 months ago, I made the mistake of going there. I had so many, like you did. I had so many people. It doesn't matter. But the point is that because of social media, because of our ability to communicate to people out there,
right,
we can turn this fucking thing on a dime.
We can.
And it's just because it's all mental. It's all, Dzogchen Buddhism basically says that enlightenment can only and ever happen now. There's no other thing.
Yeah, it's not a destination.
It's not you don't meditate to become enlightened in the future. Dzogchen says it's now. And by the same token, we're living in a time, in an era that Terence McKenna, now deceased, said that if an alien came to Earth during the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and thought that what they were seeing was normal, he said it would be like be coming to meeting someone you didn't know anything about humans, and the first human you met was a woman giving childbirth. You thought that was normal. We as a species are giving birth to whatever it is that's next, and it ain't what's now, and it ain't what was, and we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy time to live. I'm done.
It's a crazy time to live, and I think you bring up a lot. But what's interesting about the music thing you brought up in the Pluto-Uranus conjunction was the opposition to Saturn and Pisces. Right, and to me, that was like, that's like a holy transit, basically. How, if you understand math, and that's why we're astrologers, because the synchronicity is almost too perfect. To get those two planets, Pluto, Uranus, in the dead conjunction takes, phenomenal amounts of years to happen. And for the fact that a planet that already takes a long time to hit anything was in dead opposition to that at that time would make that Pluto-Uranus conjunction.
With Chiron there, too.
Oh, and they didn't even know about Chiron yet, which was so funny. Yeah. They were just about to find it in 71, right?
77.
Or 77, sorry.
77.
And so it was not even understood. And where was Chiron? Was it in Virgo or was it in Pisces?
It was in Pisces.
Oh, so it was with Saturn. And how funny that right now we have Chiron and Pisces now, and this time with Neptune there and the nodes. And I do want to talk about the nodes, but we got to take a quick little break here, everyone.
Let's do it.
So we'll be back with Rick Levine in 1 second. Don't go nowhere, anybody. You are watching us right now, and I don't want you to go nowhere. So
nowhere.
See you in a second.
Oh, I
Yeah.
At some point in time when we talked about loads, we'll go.
Wake up to astrology like you've never seen before.
Welcome back to the Leo King channel, where we're talking with, right now, Rick Levine. We're live, and now we're about to talk about the nodes, and I'm looking forward to talking about this because this is such a powerful time with the nodes and what's happening right now. Just because the fact that the nodes are exactly in a conjunction, in opposition to the planet Neptune in its home sign, which no human has ever seen in our lifetime.
In our lifetime.
Correct.
Yeah. Or since it was discovered, even since it was known. So people don't understand the nodes. Astrologers use them, and they don't understand the nodes. And the nodes are incredibly important, and I'm going to explain very briefly why they're so important. So here we are on Earth, and the moon is going around the Earth. All right. Meanwhile, the Earth is going around the sun.
Gotcha.
So the moon going around the Earth and the Earth going around the sun are doing it in different planes. The moon's orbit around the Earth, kind of that plane rocks. And the Earth going around the sun is more stable from our point of view. But when you have two waves going around in circles, they intersect kind of like in a straight line. It's like taking two pieces of paper, you know, or a rule, law in geometry. Two planes intersect in a straight line. So the straight line of the frisbee of the moon going around the Earth and the larger frisbee of the Earth going around the sun, they intersect and they make a line. That line is defined by the north and south node of the moon. Now, hold that thought for a second, because the word node has meaning more than just to astrologers.
It's not, correct?
It's not.
It's not.
It's so like if you throw a rock in a pond and the ripples are going out, and then you throw another rock in a pond and the ripples are going out. You know, the water isn't moving away from the center. The energy is. The water's just going, the bobber just goes up and down. It doesn't move out unless you're a surfer and you catch the wave. But what happens is that as the waves move, as the energy moves out and the waves move out, they cross. And where they cross, they create something that a physicist would call a node. The node is where two waves intersect. That the wave of the Earth, the wave of the moon. But the thing is that as the waves are moving, the nodes stand still. And in fact, a physicist would call those a standing node. Or what happens then is the nodes generate out their own pattern, like they're the center. And those are called standing waves. These waves come out of nothing was there.
They're magical too, like because they can create their own.
Here's the thing.
They almost are creating their own vibration.
Well, that's right. You are solid. I am solid. Yeah. This is solid. There's no solid stuff out there.
You can't even see it.
But at the microcosmic level, electrons are going so fast around nucleuses that there's nothing solid. They're waves. But when one intersects with another, they create nodal points that give us the illusion of the three-dimensional world. We see things and feel things and measure things as three-dimensional because of very, 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 very high-frequency electromagnetic waves intersecting. And it was Nikola Tesla who said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Now, Nikola Tesla, as you may know, is the guy who went up against Thomas Edison, and he figured out alternating current. Everything we use electricity is based on his patents, including transformers were his patents, hydroelectric power. This guy had a sense of the universe that no one has ever had.
Right.
Now, the thing is that in astrology, we're looking at these planets moving around. Everything, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Everything's moving. But the nodes in Eastern astrology and Vedic astrology are considered to be real. We think of nodes in the West as mathematical points, but they think of nodes as shadow planets.
Gotcha.
Just because you can't perceive them doesn't mean that they're any less real.
Right.
So here's the deal. The nodes are the place where the illusion of this play of light that we live in occurs. It's, in fact, in Hindu astrology, they call the nodes Maya. In fact, in Hindu astrology, in the West, we think the south node's bad, the north node's good.
Right.
South node's where we're coming from, north node's where we're going to.
Right.
In Hindu astrology,
It's the opposite,
they all
right?
suck. No,
They all suck?
They suck. Why? Because they both are the origins of the illusion that three-dimensional reality is real. And so you look at these things from different points of view, and you begin to see how important the nodes are, because without the intersection of the moon's orbit around the Earth, none of this stuff would appear to be, and yet it's also a trap. The south node may be more of a trap than the north node. Anyhow, that's my short version of my little rant.
As we go into that, do you mind pulling up your chart real quick? Because the south node is almost dead conjunct during this really wild time right now to Neptune.
Yeah.
And Neptune rules the media. It rules television. It rules the invisible.
It rules all imagination.
Yeah, and
anything
the I always call it the transmission of the opposite of Virgo. It's like what you describe as the imaginative version of what we define as real.
Deepak Chopra
right?
would call it the indeterminate quantum wave field.
Okay.
It's the field of everything. McTaggart wrote a book called The Field. It's the field of everything.
Yeah.
And yet the interesting thing is William Blake wrote, and I love this quote, he wrote, what is now proved was once only imagined. Don't minimize things just because they're in the imagination.
Right.
We dream things and then we manifest them. We make them real.
Mm-hmm.
And Caroline Casey, an astrologer associate of ours, who refers to herself as a visionary activist, she says that Neptune, or imagination, lays the tracks for the reality train to follow. So just because Neptune is illusion, is dreams, is fantasy, is spiritual, is not physical, doesn't mean it's less important, or doesn't mean it's unreal. It just means it's a dream.
Right. Which, speaking of dreams, I mean, when you go into your dream state, I have a heavy dream state. I'm a heavy 12th house person. So, I feel like I'm in a whole other land.
Even now.
Totally. But what's interesting about this South Node Neptune conjunction, and Neptune being in its home sign of Pisces, which, like you said, nobody's really understood this spot and felt it or seen it. And it's interesting to see that the media at its peak power of television and virtual reality now, and your phone and everything is coming now through this form. It's like, this is done,
Yeah.
And I feel that we've called it the distraction because the other half of
Wait
Neptune...
a minute. It's the past calling.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude. We're not home anymore.
We're not here. But there's this distraction going on to what... You and I had a great conversation with AT Man at ISAR about cosmology.
ISAR, or ESAR, is the
ESAR.
International Society for Astrological Research.
That was just in Costa Mesa for 5 days.
Yeah, a
yes.
conference of...
And you spoke there just recently,
yeah.
yes.
And Tad Mann is a
right.
longtime brilliant astrologer.
Awesome guy.
Yeah,
funny, amazing Leo, man. Another fire sign.
Well, he's a fire sign theater himself. He's a Leo,
he is.
Sag, and
Yeah.
Aries. But Tad is one of the few people who can keep up with this kind of talk and then go 2 steps beyond, and you go,
oh.
huh.
And while doing it while laughing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But we had a great conversation about cosmology and what is the universe that we're really living in. Is it really... Well, nobody knows. That's what we were talking about, is exactly, how to measure this. I mean, there's the NASA science kind of story that they've created of this is what it is. And then there's this...
Well, there may be 2 NASA stories, the one that they've created and one that they know.
Yeah, that's true. And that's what I think is the distraction point. Because all I think about in my soul when I look at this election with Trump and Hillary is that's just white noise to just, sucking people's energy into not seeing that during this transit, you can feel deep inside of yourself there is this reality that's trying to reveal itself that we can't see.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you feel that there's some sort of very subtle gender bias that we refer to Trump by his last name and Hillary familiar by her first name?
It's weird like that.
It is. I'm not saying that there is. I've just thought about it. It's a strange thing.
It's a strange thing, and it's a very big battle between masculine and feminine that's going on right now.
It may be, but you probably can't get any more masculine in a feminine body, than Hillary.
Hillary, and you can't get any more masculine in a masculine body than Trump. Which is
not the kind of masculine that I ascribe to.
I call it. He's not divine masculine. He's masculine.
He's an aberrated masculine. But whatever, regardless of what
he's a long one who has not learned class, I guess you could say, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, not.
It was given to
He's
him
not
or
learned to
whatever.
play well with others.
Well, he's got
regardless.
Regulus, and we don't want to go into him.
Yeah. No,
but that's
true.
the whole distraction point. Again,
It
is how we were in the right space, and then look at
All of a sudden-
how it pulled us away, and that's what's going on right now.
And that certainly is indicative of Neptune and the South Node.
Yes.
Because the South Node, if one subscribes to the Western point of view, you see, we think the North Node is where we're going, and the Hindus say, no, that's an illusion too. You don't want to accumulate anything here. You don't want to have experience. You just want to have detachment. But if we take the Western modality, which we probably do largely, the South Node, in a way, it represents the past, but not on a linear line, on a soul conceptual framework. Yeah. In other words, the South Node is a go-to point when everything sucks because we got it down. Been there, done that, past life, childhood, family, genes, whatever. And so it's like Freud called it infantile regression. When the shit gets bad, we go back to an earlier point. And so that's the South Node. And with Neptune there, we don't even know we're doing it. It's a mystery. It's all illusion. And we're buying into this illusion because it's the easiest way through.
And it doesn't get stronger than this, is what I've really been telling to my viewers and my astrology practice is it doesn't get stronger than this. This is the strongest.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that this is the nodes. Because what we forgot to bring up about the nodes is this is eclipse areas.
That's the,
right.
Well,
that's the determination.
The thing about the nodes is that when the nodes are close to a new moon or a full moon,
boom,
that's what eclipses are. That is.
So we're in the middle of a 6 months eclipse cycle because we just finished the last ones in the last month in September.
Yeah, there were 2.5 of them.
Yeah, and this was an odd one because we had that
First
weird
one
in Aquarius Leo
that wasn't
technically
eclipse,
not, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
And
2.5 eclipses.
So interesting, this election's happening. Interesting. That the deception game or the illusion game is at its peak during this time, and people seem to think, oh, it's the emails, or oh, it's Russia trying to sway the election to make Trump win. Both sides can look at it however they want. At the end of the day, there's always a higher behind the curtain that's not exposing itself. And it's also the sign of spirituality, which I think is very interesting that at this moment, I think it's a great test. I think it's a great test of compassion. It's a great test of the higher realms if you know how to connect there, if you know how to follow that. It's also the area of where you feel kind of guided per se, right? It's the sign of guidance, like it's an internal guidance system. I call it the IGPS because it's like it's like
or the internet.
It is
the inner.
Yeah, the inner, and so this is a time where also it brings up extreme sensitivities. Like there was an article that just came out recently in the USA Today that people are getting anxiety over this election. That people are getting and it's actually affecting their health. Because the fish Pisces, it's got no protective skin. It's gills and
if it ripples, they feel the ripple.
And if there's Fukushima nuclear in the water, they feel it. If you pick one up, they definitely feel it. That's why their only defense mechanism is to be slippery, to try and slip away. Mm-hmm. And so there's this aspect where all of us want to avoid reality, want to avoid certain things, and want to slip out of this somehow. But interesting that Saturn's been in Sagittarius, squaring it and not allowing
interesting
that.
You brought that up. Interesting you brought that up because I was just thinking as we were talking that the order of events astrologically, called planetary order sometimes, is very important. Mm-hmm. Now, we've been in and out of, since a year ago, we've been in and out of this Saturn squaring Neptune, and therefore Saturn also squaring the nodal axis. Mm-hmm. But and of course Jupiter crossing the nodal axis, all that's history. But the fact is that although the Saturn square the nodes was part of this picture, it's done. Saturn is done technically done squaring Neptune. Now, if the Neptune went over the nodes and then it was followed by Saturn, it would be very different because it would end with a reality check.
This one's opposite.
This one's the opposite. And so the reality check has occurred. That may have been, from the American point of view, at least partially, not completely.
The rehab's over. The remission or the relapse is about to happen.
But the Saturn part of it, on some level, may have been Bernie, just getting that traction.
That's true.
Because Bernie Sanders was, in some ways, that Saturnian truth-telling, whether or not.
And he had Uranus on his moon in Aries, and he was definitely belching it out.
All right. So now that Saturn's gone, it's so easy to slip back into the illusion.
I know.
That's
what I'm saying. And no irony that heroin is on the highest rise and death rate right now in the world. Spirituality's peaking, but on the other half, the unconscious is peaking. It's a very weird transit, and this has been my number one thing I've been focusing on, because I think the outer planets, to me, and when you deal with the nodes, and you're dealing with Chiron, which is already a mystical, weird thing because it's not a planet, and they're all involved with this mutable energy that's happening right now in our lives. This is a very weird moment that we can't see the other side.
Yeah. And it's interesting, while Mars now is lining up, joining Pluto, the intensity, the debate last night, just the Mars-Pluto-ness, and then it will come up next week to square Uranus. Okay, I know that...
Why don't you pull that up? Let's see what happens here. Let's show people what happens
in a week.
Here. Yeah.
So pay attention to the Mars at the top of the chart lined up with Pluto, and watch how the square between Mars and Uranus, that line gets fatter and fatter and fatter. There we go towards the 28th. And now we have that Mars on the 28th square Uranus from 21 degrees to 21 degrees of Aries. Now,
the moon's going to go dark. It's balsamic phase in the moon during that time.
That's right. And the moon is actually kicking into that same Pluto. The moon
that
squares,
14 degree right there. The squares.
Squares to Pluto. It squares Mars, and it opposes Uranus. And so this is it's like the other shoe to drop. I said that at the beginning of the month.
And Venus and Saturn. Look at that, too.
Well, and that Venus and Saturn is also important because while the Mars and the Moon and Jupiter are tickling the cardinal, the remnant of the cardinal square, the Uranus-Pluto square, at the same time, Venus is now coming through and reactivating the Saturn-Pluto square because Venus will conjunct Saturn.
Saturn-Neptune square.
Saturn-Neptune square because it'll square Neptune and then conjunct Saturn. And this one gets it the opposite way.
Right.
So here we end up with the Venus-Saturn just a couple days before election. But here's the interesting thing, is that the Mars squaring Uranus, I said in my YouTube video that I did at the end of last month for this month, I said that if you think things are weird now, the middle of the month, they're going to get weirder. And by the end of the month, you're going to even wonder what play you're watching, what book you're reading, what's going on. And so as strange as things are already, and they're pretty strange. I mean, look, this is an election year. Again, regardless of politics, there ain't ever been one like this before.
Never.
And I still will say, on record, we ain't seen anything yet because we have a week and a half or two. And I think that as we move closer to this new moon in Scorpio, but in particular as the moon goes balsamic, as it goes toward its darkness, and that T-square is picked up with Mars squaring Uranus, someone's going to go, something's going to get crazy.
It has to.
Even if it's crazy now, it'll look like it was sane.
And that's what's funny is we're sane people living in an insane world, and that's what's so weird about
Ram
this.
Dass tells a story of the astrologer or advisor to the king going to the king. It's some old, going to the king and saying, "King, I have some very bad news, but I have some good news too." And he goes, the bad news is that this entire year's crop of rye, of wheat, is tainted with a fungus, with an ergot, like LSD. Mm-hmm. And he goes, the good news is you can eat it, and it's not poisonous, but if you eat it, it'll make you go crazy. It'll make you go sane. What I've done, the good news is I've gone to the stores of all last year's crop, and I've taken enough of it and put it in your special stores so that you and I have enough to remain sane throughout the entire year. And the king goes, thank you for telling me that. As your king, I command you to destroy the good grain. But before we do, we're going to paint big red dots on each other's foreheads. And through the year, if we tried to be sane when everyone else went insane, that would make us insane. But if we go crazy with everyone else, then we'll come out of it okay. And if we look at each other and see these big red dots, that'll be our reminder that we can remember that we're really insane.
Wow.
It's a fact. That's where we are.
Yeah, it is.
You know, you can't do sane stuff out there, really sane, because you'll end up in jail or you'll end up. I mean, you'll end
up.
The
The real
crucified.
sanity is gone.
Yeah.
And the insanity is what's the norm.
And again, the good news is that with more people awakening, social media, spiritual awareness, as that continues to build, with the social media aspect of it, at any given moment, just like the Dzogchen practitioner, we have the ability culturally, planetarily to go, got it.
We do.
Got it.
And
that's it. It changes everything.
And
We came close.
Yesterday, when you and I were at the Getty Center, which actually, I might pull up a couple pictures here, if I could pick up my, we lost the mouse there. There's a couple pictures that I want to put up on the screen, and I want to talk to you about. I have a bunch of quincunxes in my chart, so I can't get this all straight.
So you know what I learned about quincunx recently? All my life I've been saying quincunx.
Mm-hmm.
Quincunx. It's actually
Quink.
unx. Because unx means 12, quink is 5. It's 5/12. It's not quincunx. It's quincunx. Just a little word geeky thing.
I like it. Now, we actually stood in front of this yesterday. Okay? It was this weird picture here of Mercury at the center.
I got it on my...
Oh, okay. Why don't we'll go to yours. Let's, okay.
Whoop, what the hell just happened? Come back. There it is.
Okay.
No, there it is. But
So, there you and I are sitting in front of this yesterday. Now, what was...
standing, not sitting.
Standing. And, what was interesting is when we talk about this sane world and we're living in an insane world, I want to bring up, because here's now the picture without you and I. We've disappeared.
Well done.
There's this man in the middle with the duality of life. Then there's the masculine side with the sun and the feminine side with the female. But they are chained. Somebody had wrote to me last night. I don't know if you saw the picture.
I did.
And they said, well, maybe they're the givers of life to this reality. Now, I said, well, that might be true. They might be feeding the machine of this insane world.
But it's not by their choice. They're chained.
They're chained.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting that all these old and this was during a time where it was very hard to get this information out without it being,
Death.
looked at
Death.
with death. Exactly.
Yeah, the Inquisition didn't like shit like this for sure.
And up top, they show, of course, the angels and that Hebrew. I don't know what that Hebrew
That
means.
Hebrew actually is it's a
let's go to you on yours. Let's switch back. Okay.
it's a Yud Hey Vav Hey, which is Yahweh.
Okay.
So that is the silent representation of the theoretical one God whose name cannot be uttered because there's nothing there. It's Adonai is some, but it's basically Hebrew for
now
the
all
one.
12 signs are on the top part of this. I guess you could call this an equator in the chart. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but divider. Yeah,
A divider.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
they
it
show
is.
the 12 signs on the top, and underneath that, what's underneath it is
us.
is us.
Well, all of us actually.
Yeah, all of us. And the world that we live in, because if you go down and farther, actually when I was, if you zoom in really close in the middle of the wheel, where the person is standing, so if you go up
Yeah, we're blocking it in this one.
This is a great picture, by the way. Your quality is amazing on it.
I think I have one other. No, I don't.
Because there's actually something I realized last night. These were some of the downloads that you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
So if you go up, there's another person. There's the person that's at the top of the chart, in between the worlds, basically. Go up. Okay, now scroll. Oh, you know what? Yeah. Scroll. Oh, this isn't the picture.
No,
actually.
I think it's or it's hiding behind you.
Hold on. I found it. It's a different picture. Here it is, and I'm going to pull it up now.
Okay.
Because you and I sat at this one for like 10 minutes, and we're discussing it. Now, this one, we had the 3 outer rings outside of Saturn, right? And then there was the stars that came after Saturn. Because back then, they didn't know what was past Saturn. They thought it was the end.
In fact, that's right. The word Saturn represents the outer limit. Because out past Saturn, there was nothing that moved. There was nothing animated. And so Saturn was the circumference that you couldn't go beyond, period.
Right. Now, this world that they're in, it says aqua de terra. That means it's the water of the land, right? Or
yes,
right? And again, even in this chart, there's kind of this higher, it's always reaching towards a higher realm. Now, I thought what was interesting is the 3 realms here could be the 3 outer planets they never knew and then discovered. We were trying to figure this out last night. Like, why are these 3 realms out there? Last night, I was like, oh my gosh, well, there's 3 outer planets that were found. But now what's beyond that is what humanity must write now. Because I think that the people of that time did their job, if that makes sense. And now, what's next? Maybe part of what's coming here. Now, we're going to get a little conspiracy theory here.
Uh-oh.
We're not flat Earth. I know a lot of people like to talk about that, but I don't really care about the flat Earth thing too much because I think it opens up just cosmology. Like, there is no, for sure, you know what it is. But...
By the way, I found your emblem.
Oh, yeah, we'll show people. And what was this guy's name?
This was Rudolph II.
Rudolph II.
This was the guy that Johannes Kepler basically did his chart and basically was his patron, or he was Kepler's patron. He was the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire.
That's right, and he was fascinated with alchemy and astrology and so forth, right?
Yeah, and he actually called himself the Leo King.
He did.
I just made that shit up.
I know you did. So here's my weird question. Have you ever heard of like David Wilcock or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they're all. His message right now is like disclosure's coming. Disclosure's coming. But you know that's how he's making his money, I guess, every year, telling people it's going to happen.
Yeah, but he's been saying that. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with the drill.
So and as astrologers, it's like okay. And you can look at Uranus as being alien, I've always believed that aliens aren't physical. I've always believed that they're actually multidimensional and you can't see them.
As did Carl Jung.
Really?
Yeah.
Like I don't believe, because when I did a lot of mushroom, I did a lot of acid, like you have said, you've admitted, right? You've done LSD, maybe
a few hundred times.
Okay, so.
Not for decades and decades.
No, but it was a part of your life. It was an awakening experience.
And like Steve Jobs, it wasn't just a part of my life. Psychedelics, LSD in particular, was like a sledgehammer that busted through the shit that contained me, that woke me up.
Exactly. Yes. Same to me.
It wasn't just part of my life. It was like instant. I don't think that any drugs are the answer.
Never.
But I think that right drugs at right time or right practices at right time certainly can be powerful to open people's minds.
Yes. So when I had those experiences, when I had those experiences, that was when I saw those energetic beings. Even Terence McKenna talks about seeing them as well. But they're not in our frequency range. Now, frequency range I guess you could do as a more of a Uranian/Neptunian energy, right? I mean, if you were to talk about frequency, or what would you think frequency is?
Well,
in planetary aspects and in astrology. That's my question to you, is what is frequency in the astrology to you?
So that goes back to that slide that we looked at earlier, the Tesla quote.
Yes.
That if you want to know what's
So you
going
think it's
on.
the nodes?
Well, I think that the nodes are part of it, but you see,
Okay.
I also think that the planets themselves are frequency generators.
Okay, right.
We look and we see Saturn up in the sky, but Saturn is a frequency of 3 cycles a century.
Gotcha.
Roughly. Pluto is 4 cycles a millennium. The moon is 13 cycles.
Yeah.
And so this goes back to the physicists at the quantum physics microcosmic
Right.
level. Light travels like a wave, but when you look at it, it
Boom.
becomes a particle.
Yeah.
Same with the planets. As below, so
Right,
above.
right.
So the planets are frequencies. They are waves. And yet when we look at the electromagnetic spectrum and we see the things that we see, light is a very narrow slit. And then you go higher frequency up to cosmic rays one way and lower frequency down to microwaves and radio communication and then power distribution, the Tesla waves. But it's my contention that planet waves are not separate from the electromagnetic spectrum. They're just octaves below.
Gotcha.
Instead of cycles per second or gigahertz, hundreds of trillions of cycles a
Right.
second, planets are cycles per year or cycles per century.
Yeah.
But it's not any different. So when we talk about frequency, that's all there is.
Gotcha.
Everything else is a function of artifacts, of nodes, of interference patterns. There is nothing in the universe other than frequency and angle.
Got you. And that's where my question was. I didn't know if maybe there was a planet that ruled frequency more than angle. Like
Well,
angle would be maybe more of a
here-
mercurial,
no.
right?
I think Mercury are angles you can measure.
Yeah.
But Uranus, the function
It's
of
the
Uranus
opposite
was
of
it was
the-
like
yeah.
it was like ultraviolet. It was the first thing that was a lower frequency actually, but it was the first thing that broke out of the Saturn constraints.
Right.
Because
With the
everything,
mind.
everything
Right,
in
yeah.
you see, we don't understand that. So there was this French chemist named Lavoisier who is credited with discovering oxygen. That's the way we learn about him in school. In his day and age, he didn't discover oxygen. He was a scientist that actually proved that shit could exist and be invisible. We don't get that. Until then, there was either things existed or they didn't. And so this whole movement of moving out beyond Saturn, I think of the Dr. Seuss book, On Beyond Zebra. We're out beyond Saturn. Saturn is, if it's real, if it has substance, it's Saturnian, this side of Saturn. And you think of wealth used to be the accumulation of material things. The people who were the wealthiest, what they have? They had real estate.
Yeah.
That's Saturn. All right. Now, who are the wealthiest people? They're people that own frequency vibrations.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. They may be packaged in products, but the wealthiest people, the wealthiest guy in Mexico is basically
The telephone. Yeah.
The U.S. government doesn't auction off huge masses of land anymore. They auction off sections of the electromagnetic frequency for hundreds of billions of dollars. So the whole thing is switched with the outer planets on beyond Saturn. Yeah, it is Uranus, which is the lightning striking and making us aware that the physical thing isn't the limit anymore. Then Neptune comes in and goes, whoa, there's more here. And then, now here's the fascinating thing. So back at the previous Uranus-Neptune conjunction in 1814, I think, right around there.
After the
1819.
And it was in
I don't know where. I can tell you in a second, but for what I'm going to say, it doesn't matter.
It wasn't in Gemini, no, because
So
that was the Civil War.
It was
Uranus
this was 1819, and it was a Uranus conjunction of Uranus and Neptune. And At that time, you had Faraday and Hertz and these people playing with electricity, trying to figure out what it was and what's magnetism. And this guy named Hans Christian Ørsted, who is so well grounded in physics that there's a unit of measure called the Ørsted in electricity.
Right.
And Hans Christian Ørsted was a lecturer of physics at a university in Copenhagen, and lectures, they think he probably had 6 or 8 students. You know, I don't know. But he had a closed circuit with a wire with a voltmeter. And he connected a battery and showed that there was current, took the battery out and showed there wasn't. He had a bar magnet. And he took the bar magnet and he went like this over the wire because there was some connection between magnetism, the bar magnet, and electricity, the voltmeter. And he realized that as he moved the bar magnet, the needle went. That electromagnetism was coined.
Right, yeah.
Now, here's the thing that's totally crazy. In astrology, what planet is associated with nervous energy, electric energy?
Uranus.
What planet with the mysterious fields of magnetism? Neptune.
Yeah.
The
Together,
word electromagnetism was coined and the concept of electromagnetism was created out of Uranus. You can't make it up this good. Uranus, the planet of electricity, joins Neptune, the planet of magnetism, and a guy goes, electromagnetism.
And then that's how when we got internet after.
Well, then there was a lot of
one.
other stuff in it. The opposition of the Uranus-Neptune opposition, that was Einstein, 1905. That was Einstein's years of
relativity,
of relativity, Brownian motion. They call those the 3 papers that shook physics. Anyhow, enough.
So,
but it's all frequency, and it's the past Saturn planets that are frequency
so that's why
without
if you look at
physicality.
this, here they knew that they didn't. I believe after looking at this that the astrologers knew that there was these 3 layers that were going to be found they didn't know.
And I believe that you believe that.
I know, and I'm my Saturn and Sagittarius right now is I'm
That's good.
setting that.
That's good.
Because what comes after that now is what we have to kind of finally try and look in our own way, what that is. Now, I don't know what that is. Like, they didn't know. Now, they put angelic realms because it was like, haha, these beautiful realms outside of Saturn, which we just talked about, which brought all these things that you just described. That's why I believe this.
Yeah.
But what's going to come after that?
The aliens. They'll be back. They'll develop some technology of manifesting physically. No, I mean
That's the thing, we don't know.
We don't know. And I often say this about to people about astrologers also. But when it comes to most of these conspiracy theories, if you're with someone who knows they know,
They don't know.
They
Exactly.
don't. It's that simple.
And maybe, well, I know about that picture.
Yes, you do.
Well, you know what it is? I don't know. Because you and I sat there, and we even asked Austin Kopak to come and look at it. And he's an esoteric master and read every esoteric book in the world. And
some in other worlds.
In other worlds. And he didn't know either. Or he says the realms of God.
Yeah.
Which, actually, believe it or not, the realms of God are the outer planets in weird ways.
In weird ways, all the realms are.
So I guess that's kind of where it all leads to now is this excitement. Everybody thinks that the last, however many years you want to call it, whether you call it 2008, 2010 when Uranus comes into Aries, whatever it is, that it was crazy, sure, but something magical is about to happen. That next realm is about to reveal itself soon. So I do believe, and I don't want to put David Wilcock down, that he makes his money off disclosure. Because it's
any more than you would put us down for making our money off of astrology.
And I
know that David absolutely
knows.
I mean,
he feels it too.
This has been his life work.
Yes, and it's good work.
And that he's making some money is fine.
Yes.
But it allows him to continue doing his work. He's not making shit up to make money.
Correct. I want to give him credit because there is something disclosed about to come. We don't know what that is, though.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's coming with this election here and and it's all about to really. Now, have you ever heard of a guy named Bashar? He channels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure,
Bashar had, when he brings, I forgot what the alien is that he channels. He had described that this breaking point was the fall of 2016. Years ago, 2-3 years ago, he said this. And there are my quincunx again is dropping things. But I believe, too, here this fall of 2016, as you described, and we're just weeks away. It's going to be a little wild ride.
I don't know. And I also know this, that all this talk, I mean, we David Wilcox, you, me, we all live on this edge of knowing that there's more to things than what's going on. And so we're open and we entertain these apocalyptic kind of things. Our friend Austin, who was with us yesterday, calls them apocalyptic because his name is Austin Kopik. But on the other side is, and someone said this at the conference last weekend at the ESAR conference, they had a debate about who would win. And the debate was kind of, I don't want to say dumb, it was people doing techniques about, it was irrelevant. I mean, it was fun, but it was irrelevant. And one of the astrologers basically said, we forget. We're talking about the possibility of someone being elected and then not being inaugurated. We're talking about the breakdown of the Constitution. We're talking all these conspiratorial theories come up. Hillary's going to be elected and she's going to die, and Bill's going to... who the hell knows? Whatever. The thing is, that this person said, is that it's going to continue going on.
Yeah.
It's going to continue going on. I was on a talk show once and they said the end of the world was forecasted by these people, blah, 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 blah. And I said to the host of this talk show, I said, David, as your temporarily court-appointed astrologer, let me give you the following advice. Don't cancel your appointment for November 3rd. That was supposed to go down on whatever.
Right, just like May 21st, 2012, that one crazy guy, the Christian guy.
The end is near. The end is here, and the end comes and goes all the time. I think of William Blake, who said he wanted on his gravestone, William Blake, born whatever year it was, 1747, died many times since. It's crazy. And yes, I think there's going to be major disclosures. I think we've been spoon-fed it for decades, whether it's through the
movies, 2001,
and the quote-unquote fake moon landings, and the Richard Hoagland stuff of the face on Mars, and and the whole idea that NASA has to protect us from this information. Roswell. I mean, but the sightings of UFOs are so widespread. Now, does that mean they're real? I can't say. I mean, I would say, if some push came to shove, but what I would say doesn't matter. Yeah. What matters is that this shit's coming more and more and more into consciousness. People are thinking about it more. And so when there is disclosure on whatever the next level is, people are going to go, oh yeah, I already knew that.
Right.
It's going to be, it's going to be instead of huh?
Yeah, it will be. And I guess I want to end this, and I know it's been a long conversation.
Good idea.
And because I got you here, we're about to have in the next 3 years Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn. Is that a way to end it off, right?
Oh my God. Well, all right. So
like if you think about it, with everything just in this.
If you think about it, this is something I've thought about. So when the World Trade Towers were bombed by whomever they were bombed by, we don't have to open up that can of worms either.
Okay.
But I can go there. But when they were, Saturn and Pluto were opposed at about 15 degrees of Gemini and Sagittarius. My ascendant...
And wasn't Jupiter had conjuncted Saturn, right? Up in Taurus, Jupiter, Saturn, Taurus conjunction in 2000.
Oh, in 2000.
And then 2001, it broke off.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So the Saturn opposed Pluto was conjunct my ascendant and descendant. So my world was melting down already.
Oh,
and when the towers were bombed, it was like, oh my God, that's my shit now. Everybody's got to deal with it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not that egocentric.
But because it's happening to your chart.
It was real time. Okay. Yeah. So I got very interested at that point in time digging into the Saturn-Pluto cycles. And because Saturn and Pluto join up, again, Pluto's speed is a little weird, but Saturn takes about 29 and a half years to come around and another few years to catch up. So about every 33 years, Saturn catches back up with Pluto.
Yes.
And that's waltz time. It's 3 beats a century. So every 100 years, it goes conjunction, opposition, conjunction, doom, boom, doom, boom, doom, boom.
Doom.
So and if you trace back, you begin to see. I mean, I could do this for almost 2,000 years, but just going to the opposition in 1898, when you had Europe basically dividing up Africa, and you had the World Zionist Organization was founded, and this idea of the Jews going back. Okay, that was in 1898. 1914, at the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto, within weeks, you had the shot that set off World War I.
Right. Over in
Serbia.
Serbia.
And so the Uranus-Pluto conjunction of 1914 was incredibly powerful from that standpoint, but you also had Lawrence of Arabia going into the Arab countries and basically telling all the Arabs, if you fight with us, we'll make sure the Turks never, because it was all the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. And they all said yes, and it was a result of that after World War I, that they were protected by England, France, the United States, and we had these states, artificial states created that never existed.
Right.
Iraq, Iran, Syria, Jordan, and Palestine.
Right.
That was at the conjunction in 1914 and after the war. Then at the opposition, we had the the opposition is 1939. This is Hitler coming to power, and it is the 38, I think. It's the craziness of martial law being declared in Palestine because the Brits promised the Palestinians that they would protect the Palestinians. They would protect them, but all of a sudden their money interest and other things with the Jews now there, so they declared martial law. Then at the
that was a crazy time because that was also when Germany and Britain got declared war.
Oh, it was also the
and
Japanese.
Winston Churchill came into power too at that time. Yeah.
Japanese invaded
China and Indonesia.
Crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then you get to the next conjunction, 1947, and you have all of a sudden Palestine. You have the United Nations created. Palestine disappears. You got Israel. And you and that is also the year that India becomes quote unquote free from Mahatma Gandhi and the Gandhi
and the hierarchy theories.
The Gandhi thing. 1898, Gandhi was in jail in South Africa. In 1939, he was in jail for the salt marches. And in 1947, they're free. But we think, oh, how cool. He was a peaceful guy and India was freed. We forget that there were about 1 million people killed in the Kashmir, India, border fights between the Muslims and the Hindus. Yeah. How quickly we forget. 1948.
Right.
Then in 1965, Saturn was opposed Uranus-Pluto, Vietnam, little things like that. And we
civil
also
rights,
had and the civil rights, but we also had the Israeli, the 6-Day War, the 65, 66, right in there. Then we jump ahead to 1982. They were conjunct again, and you think on the surface not much happened, but one weird thing happened. The Gandhi movie came out, and it was the whole Gandhi thing was always Saturn-Pluto, Saturn-Pluto.
Weird.
And also it was the only time since the colonials kicked Spain out back in the 1860s, 1830s. That was a Saturn-Pluto conjunction too.
Really?
But in 1982, England was bombing the Falkland Islands. There was another colonial war. Didn't register big maybe up here, but it was a war, Argentina against England. So and then there was the Lebanese, the Israeli.
It was also
Lebanon.
the first time that divorce rates had hit, because it was in Libra, had started to skyrocket, and it was okay now to get divorced, where it was still a little bit shunned upon. I mean, if you want to go into the Libra story.
No, it's good.
But then you go into Scorpio, because then they followed each other into Scorpio, not conjunct, but they both went in, and then AIDS came out.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
that was also Reagan economics and
So just bringing this thread up to now so that you can say what you need to say about what's coming or what we can. At the opposition, that was 9/11. That the Saturn-Pluto opposition. Again, it's Arab, little things like this. The Moors invaded Spain on a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. 5 centuries later, they were kicked out the year of a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It's crazy. So we look at.
But actually, the Saturn-Pluto square would have been Desert Storm probably then, right?
Yeah, and it also was World War II.
Yeah. Okay.
Was the square.
I was just trying to connect those two in between spots.
So as we come up to the conjunction, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which will have Jupiter.
Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. Well, it'll be at Aquarius.
It'll be Jupiter sweeping through the Pluto, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'll happen at a time of ingress of all 3 of those planets from Capricorn into Aquarius. It's going to be a whole new ball game, and we're going to see the shit that we didn't deal with at every other Saturn-Pluto conjunction and opposition back in our faces real time. Again, we can turn this thing on a dime. Consciousness can, but it's going to be, if you think this is intense, that's going to be like on a world scale intense.
And it's going to be Clinton or Trump in the middle of that one.
Or someone else. Yeah, well, I wouldn't. I get the assumption, but I wouldn't assume that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't assume that who's elected president now will be president will be running in 6 years or 5 years.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Who knows? But I'm glad that we got to cover that because those are the main things. Neptune, South Node to me, and the conjunctions that are going to happen there. That's all that's been on me as an astrologer's mind, and I'm glad that I got to get your point of view about it all.
Or as Trump said in last night's debate, it's a bigly one.
And I have one more last question for you that I ask every astrologer. Do you believe we are at the age of Aquarius, still in the age of Pisces, or in between both?
Yeah.
All 3?
No.
Which one do you feel like we're in?
Depends.
Because
this is a discussion to have next time we're together.
Okay.
But I think
because that's a big one. It's a big one.
Well, it's like you can't. Microwaves are so high frequency that when you send them down a wire, they don't even know which way to go. They have so much room to move. When you look at cycles that are so large, you can't tell from the inside from someone who lives 30 to 80 years, 30 to 100 years. You're looking at a 26,000 year cycle. We can't tell where the line is or if there's a demarcation. Right. And there are people who believe that the age of Aquarius began with the Declaration of Independence. And there are people who believe that the age of Aquarius doesn't begin for another couple hundred years. Right. We are in that transition. You don't have to be very smart to see that in the age of Aries, that there was a warrior god that was a Martian god that was ruled by fire and brimstone, that the Jewish religion coming out of that time had a ram's horn, and then as we moved into the age of and before that the age of Taurus, where you had Hinduism, the holy cow, in Egypt or in Hindu. And then when
it was also the beginning of like money and materialism and all that, because
absolutely. And then when
Aries kind of identifies what man is,
and then when the precession of the equinox backed into Pisces,
the shit hit the weirdness.
Well, it was like the priesthood took the animated universe and labeled it and made it secret.
Right, but see, Pisces is a dual-ruled sign of Neptune and Jupiter. So there's two.
Well, and it's two in as much as
gluttony and it's the higher.
It is. It's physical and metaphysical.
Yeah,
it's evolution and de-evolution. It's the opposites, but the opposites connected by that golden thread is basically reserved for the priesthood. The priests are the only ones who can know God.
Yeah.
Now, as we move into the age of Aquarius,
everyone knows it.
That's right. Bucky Fuller wrote an amazing poem that in the 1940s, and it's called "No More Secondhand God."
Yeah.
He's flying over Oslo in an airplane. It's at night. He looks into the instrument panel. and he goes, and I see God. But the point is, it shifts. The experience is direct. Now, I think it's important to understand that time isn't like clockwork out there, that different people enter the age of Aquarius at different times. We have a culture where there are some people still living in the age of Aries,
That's an interesting. I haven't heard that one yet.
And so
that's a good one.
It's not like, now we're all there. You go to different cultures and different places. I've had the luxury of traveling to some places where this environment that we live in is
completely.
It's not even. They don't even know it's not there. So Age of Aquarius. You may be there. I may be there. David Wilcock may be there. Many of our viewers may be there. And there are people who are so entrenched in the age of Pisces that they're still reciting the Orthodox Piscean liturgy as it was prior to the Protestant Reformation. And that's not meant as a slur against any religion.
Of course.
I believe that every religion has the grain of truth. Matthew Fox, a retired or fired, as he said, by the Pope priest, said it doesn't matter where you dig the water. Or it doesn't matter where you dig the well. You get to the same water.
Yeah.
And I believe that.
Well, thank you for answering that, because in my last movie I just did, I did it because this is a very rocky, cuspy moment here between ages. And I feel that that's heavily connected to all this
I want to watch that. How do I watch that? Can I?
Yeah, ageofdeceptionmovie.com. But no, I'll give you a copy of it. It's 4 hours long. So
I take it back. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah. But anyway, so thank you for answering that, because I believe that I called the movie Age of Deception because the last 2,000 years of this Neptunian / Jupiter and Pisces energy force is coming to an end. And I showed that there is something that happens every 2,000 years, whether you want to call it 2,400 or 2,000 or whatever it is. There's something that happens every 2,000 years, and it takes a couple hundred years to kind of move all the way in. And we're at that place.
Well, we're at the place where there's enough people moving into that it matters.
That it matters.
But we don't know how many people have moved into it and how much it matters.
And then I want to say this. So 325, Constantine comes in and creates the allowing of Christianity. So it takes like 300 years for even Christ to really even become what it is. It's interesting that the people now that are doing the things now, couple hundred years from now, might be the people that are pushing our message, or whoever that's out in this time is what is the Age of Aquarius. So that's why I give everybody
the gospel of John Lennon and the Beatles.
Correct.
No,
or Rick Levine and Star IQ.
By the way, if anyone is still if anyone is still watching, I just want to, before we leave, just let people know that I am leading a 10-day retreat in Goa, India, at the end of January 21st through the 30th. And we still have some spots available, not many, but if you're interested, either send me an email directly, and that's rlevine, RLEVINE at stariq.com, rlevine at stariq.com, or go to my Facebook page. There's links there on it. It's going to be, the title of the workshop is Experiencing the Spiritual Dimensions of Astrology. And it's going to be a blast. And
you're doing it with Kaipasha Lesher, right?
No, that one's in May.
That one's in May.
Different. That's in Costa Rica.
So this is the one in Bali, right?
No, this is in India.
In India.
Bali, India.
You have so many retreats.
No, but this one is in a beautiful part of India. We're staying at a place on the beach. We're on the beach for 10 days. And it's a safe, it's less India than some India. And it'll be me, and there'll be probably about 15 to 20 of us. Small group, will not be any larger than 20 people. But for the next maybe 3 weeks, there are still some rooms available.
Great.
If you're interested, it'll be an experience of a lifetime, experiencing the spiritual dimensions of astrology. It won't all be head stuff. We'll be doing physical stuff. We'll be doing chart work in a chart. We'll be doing astrodrama, if all these are new terms. The full curriculum is on the web. Send me an email, and I'll send you more information.
And follow Rick on Facebook, too, Rick Levine, because you post all this stuff on Facebook, correct?
Yeah, and the place to follow me there is facebook.com/Rick Levine Astrologer.
Perfect, yeah. Well, I'm so happy
has
that
been
we
a
got to.
blast.
It's been a
Yeah.
blast. Thank you,
Yay.
because I needed, to be honest with you, I kind of felt like a junkie that's been needing a fix for a long time with astrology talk.
Well, I knew we'd get along fine.
And
We've been watching each other online for quite a while.
Yeah, we have-
and
we
have
have.
had some communication via chat or email. But
and
we just met.
telepathy wise.
But we just met at the conference over the weekend.
We did.
I knew we would have fun, and
I know.
we did. And
And
we hope you did too.
I know we did. We had over 400 people, but you know what's weird is every 45 minutes it kicks it off into a new one. So some people don't know how to get back on. But anyways, I recorded this so people will watch this as one long video when we put it on YouTube and on Facebook again. So
Real long, too long.
it's an
But it was
hour
fun.
and 35 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Anyhow.
So anyways, a perfect way to end it. Rick Levine, the man, the legend here.
The advisor to the king.
And anyways, you guys know where to find me, theleoking.com, and of course, get the app, theleokingapp.com. Thanks so much for all your support, everyone, and thank you again, Rick, for being
Thanks.
here. Appreciate it.
It's been a blast.
I'll throw down the mic.
We get to do this.
I appreciate you. Seriously, man.
Right back at you.
All right, and everybody out there, I appreciate you all as well. So thank you so much for all your support. Truly, truly, truly appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next video, and especially on your horoscopes too, Rick.
And I feel that hope has been really shitty on the planet.
To reach heaven or into the heavens of God. What the hell is going on? What's going on?
To have the right perception.
Hope in the desert to me is the hope that people are going to be willing to really just pay attention to their own research and make a decision, whatever it might be, to just bring to that place of oneness. Because that's the trajectory, that's the destination.